Hey, y'all. Welcome to Gabfocus, our first ever pop-up event. Melissa, how in the world are ya?
Fantastic. It only took us a couple of months to get this one scheduled.
Yes. So,
So,
welcome back. I all the names on the attendees list here, I recognize y'all, and so there's no newbies at this episode. So, welcome back. This is a part two to the original 50th anniversary or 50th episode milestone that we had. So it's keeping up with your facility. I'm bringing back the two of the best, Jackie and Nigel. How in the world are you two doing?
Tommy, doing great, mate. How are you,
So
Melissa?
great, my
Great
friend.
to see everybody.
Yep, happy November. My wife told me, and she's been sharing Christmas propaganda, but she said that November 1st is really the first day of Christmas season, and
yeah,
Thanksgiving is the first Christmas party.
I like that.
So
I'm
she,
going to use that.
she's been feeding me
Some awesome
propaganda via
marketing
TikTok.
right
But Jackie, I love the necklace. Welcome back.
I said, this is my leftover Texas alternative, and I just decided to keep it, and I'll boot, scoot, and boogie the rest of the year with my Texas
Go.
jewelry.
You
Yes.
earned it. It's all good.
Yes, you have. But as we were talking before the show during lobby talk, what upgrades people have done, and Phil, shout out Phil for sharing. He recently installed 25 doors, $1,000 a pop installed, which is like, okay, that's pretty solid. We got some other things, some new asphalt, some new lights, a new camera. So love seeing everyone upgrading and maintain their facilities. And what we talked about was like, yeah, this whole thing about mailbox money and passive income may be mistaken with a different industry.
Not exactly true.
Not exactly true, but we have the right people in the audience today. Welcome. In case anyone doesn't know you, Jackie, who are you? What do you do? And why are you here?
My name's Jackie Balo, and I am with Everbright Coatings, and I talk curb appeal. Pretty much that's my new job. It's curb appeal all the time. So that goes perfectly with keeping your facility looking great and doing your upgrades and keeping your maintenance and really making your facility look the best it can so that you can get as many people and quality people into your facility.
I'm in love. You're the curb appeal lady. Let's go. I love it. I love it. Nigel, same questions to you. Who are you? What do you do? And why are you here?
Yeah, not much curb appeal looking here, Tommy. So I'm the director of operations at Storage Structures out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're a nationwide provider of storage facilities using our patented alpha framing system. And I talk all things nuts and bolts, and then we see a lot of facilities after a few years that need some help with roofing and bits and pieces like that. So that's what we do over here.
Well, you too. Welcome back. And Melissa, I'm excited about this one. And let's see if we can talk about all the things. So this was part of the original 50th episode agenda, but we already took care of doors in that last episode. So
That's
let's
all
see
we
if we
took care
can
of,
tackle. Yeah, right. Let's see if we can tackle walls, gates, and fencing. Let's talk about that curb appeal that Jackie was just talking about, like how to present your facility, how to keep it clean, some maintenance, and then we got a lightning round. We're gonna try to go for about 45 minutes today, and kind of see where the conversation takes us. And if there's Q&A, like there always often is, y'all know where to post it. Click on the little Q&A icon and post your questions there. So without further ado, Melissa, let's kick this off.
Let's do it. Okay. So I want to talk about options for perimeter walls, fencing, gates. I know you guys see a lot of different kinds of facilities, so let's talk about those. What are the options when you're building a facility or you're looking to upgrade?
Nigel?
Okay.
I think that, it's having a gate, any kind of gate or any kind of fencing system is really important. I see some out there that have nothing. And it's like, oh, that doesn't look secure at all. And me personally wouldn't feel like my stuff was secure at all. So I think, anything is helpful. And I really think, okay, sorry, Melissa. I think if you're going to have like a wall, making sure you have some like of those facade doors, the fake doors on the outside, because people identify the like facilities by the doors. And so having those facade doors, those fake ones out there, at least tell them that it's self-storage. If you have a wall and not a gate or a fence you can see through. But if you have walls, I definitely suggest those doors.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can obviously design your facility using your exterior buildings as part of your wall, right? So to Jackie's point, dummy doors on that. So that's more like a fortress type, facility that they call it, where you use your existing facility as your fence. But you can have chain link fence, you can have wrought iron fences. Wrought iron fence take a lot of maintenance, with painting and upkeep. Chain link looks exactly like chain link does. So depending on what you're trying to, how you're trying to, promote your business is dependent on the fencing type that you take. But gates and fencing is so important. I think we talked about it last time, where we're talking about a brightly lit facility and a safe and facility that feels secure. Well, obviously a fence around your facility is a huge part of that, and giving the feeling of security when you're inside the building or at the building or whatever you're doing in your unit.
So along with that comes the question of gates, though. There's a variety of gates for those that may not be aware. You've got swing gates and slide gates and lift gates. Do you have any kind of preference for the type of gate that's used, or is it really just dependent on the property and the traffic flow and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so a lot of it, gate determination is based on the type of property. So if you have a slide gate, do you have enough room to slide the gate in one direction or the other? Is it staying within your property? If you have a lift gate, there may be a need for that, but maybe your office is attached to the entry right there and you can't use a lift gate. Swing gates are notoriously slow. And they obviously have more moving components with more hinges, and then you have hydraulic rams or electric rams that are moving the gates open and close. So I think it's a bit of a personal preference, but a lot of it I think is based on what your property looks like at the front and what can you utilize gate wise to make it work. And then obviously you need somewhere for cars to stop, get to a keypad. Then you have the keypad considerations as well, and how do you put all that together, and is there enough room does an 18-wheeler have enough room to pull up to your gate, or does it have to park on the road? And then now you have a safety issue for drivers and customers that are trying to get in the facility. So there's a lot of consideration of gate location and what sort of gate you're using, just based on the facility that you plan on building, or the facility that you have right now.
Right. Yeah. Tim actually made a note in the chat that weather's also a factor there in Canada. So, depending on lots of things, you might have to change your gate selection. So
Yeah, no, that's a big deal. I've heard Chad Lundberg, who's been a Gabfocus multiple times. He has facilities in Michigan, and he talked one time during a Gabfocus about how the gate controller would freeze because I guess it snows and it gets really cold in Michigan, and the customers can't get out. Like they got in, but now they can't get out because the gate controller is malfunctioning. So, any tips around that? Like, have you, Nigel or Jackie, have you guys ran into that, or have any customers who've shared that problem? Has that been something you guys have dealt with, or any recommendations there? Or Tim, maybe a question for you in the comments. How do y'all deal with this in Canada? I know it gets very cold up there.
I would think, I don't have any personal experience, but I would think that keeping the clearance of all the snow would be important, and keeping the snow from sitting on, the gate controller, maybe insulating that gate controller so that it can't freeze.
Yeah. Even in Tennessee, we've dealt with this problem before, not necessarily because of the amount of snow, but just because of the freezing temperatures. And when we were ever expecting like a long period of, it's going to be like, really, really cold. I think it was last December. We were like in the single digits. Remember that, Tommy?
Oh my gosh,
We
yeah,
were dying
that's
here.
cold for us. Tim, I know you're
Yes.
laughing, but
I know.
that's cold for
That
us.
is cold for us. And like our electronics, they don't function even in the cold like that. And so we just had like a whole period of time where we just had to make the business decision that we were just going to leave the gate open.
Wow.
And but it was that, or we would have to just turn it off and leave it shut. And then you're going to make people mad because they can't get to their things. So it was kind of like, yeah, you just have to pick one. It's either going to be open or it's going to be closed, because we didn't want to risk someone getting stuck inside. So yeah, sometimes you just have to kind of look at your weather and plan ahead. So
Yeah.
So
So
sorry, Tommy, just
no good.
Constant maintenance of that sort of stuff as well. Are you talking about the keypads? Are you talking about moisture getting into the electronics and it's freezing and that sort of stuff? So are your keypads in good condition? Are they, are your maintenance people taking care of that? Are they cleaning them? Are they making sure that everything's intact? So just preventative maintenance, I guess, this time of year going into the winter and into the colder, although it's cold here now, but just preventative maintenance, again, just keeping on top of that sort of stuff and identifying the issue before you come across it or before you have to face it in the real world.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And then, Tim said there in the comments there, y'all, is like, yeah, they just have to start doing daily checks. It's a beast, but you got to do it and you got to do monitoring. So I think it's a good segue to like suggestions and ideas on cleaning and maintenance, especially, talking about fences and walls and gates. Like, what are some recommendations, what are some ideas, how often you should be doing these things? And, it sounds like, if you're in the cold weather or wet weather, daily monitoring is a big deal. But like, yeah, suggestions on cleaning and maintaining these other areas that are very visible to customers, right? We talk about doors being a visible piece, but your walls, your fencing, the facade doors, the gates, all of these things are very visual to customers. So how do you keep them clean and how do you maintain them?
Yeah. Jackie, you want to go?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think, as long as you're not getting water in the units, pressure washing is probably a good, easy way to go. With the doors, you got to be careful, very, very careful with that, because you can actually get it in the unit. So, but cleaning them out with, whether it's a wall, a concrete wall, or the other sides of your building, as long as you're not high pressure washing, low pressure washing, right? But you're cleaning those off and making sure that those stay clean. That's really important. And then also if you're going to be salting, going back to snow, if you're going to be salting, making sure that you're sweeping that up too, and making sure your customers can actually get into their units. That's like Melissa, you were saying, we had to make the decision whether to stay or open or close. And I'm assuming then you're also plowing so that people can get in.
yeah, that at that point we didn't actually have snow. We just had freezing temperatures that caused every pipe in Tennessee, froze solid, and all the gates stopped working. So everything was just cold. Snow wasn't an issue. I know in the past when we have dealt with snow, that's one of those times where we just lock the gate shut and we're like, sorry, no access. I mean, it just is what it is. In Tennessee, wait 24 hours and it's gone anyway. So it's like you're going to have a slight delay, but that would be, our weather policy, because we didn't want to deal with somebody slipping and falling on ice and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with the ice and the snow and stuff. Maintaining that, having clear pathways. Obviously, I can imagine that's probably a liability issue if you're allowing people on the property and you haven't cleared it. But I think Laura had said in the chat earlier that they're power washing and cleaning gutters right now. So those ongoing maintenance things per the manufacturer's requirements. So if you've got anything that's moving, obviously there's a lot more maintenance in that. If you've got a static wall or the backside of your building, then following the manufacturer's recommendations. If you have a roof, gutters especially, we get a lot of calls from people saying, "Oh, my roof is leaking." Well, we go to the facility and we look at it, and they've got a tennis ball in the downspout, or they've got a beer can in the downspout, or there's a bullet hole in the roof, or there's leaves and there's all sorts of stuff on these facilities that build up over time. It's something you never really think about, because gutters and roofs especially only work when it's raining, and then you only ever see the problem. So you have to have a regular maintenance schedule built in. So it might be a quarterly schedule, it might be a yearly schedule, or it might be a 2-year schedule, just depending on what that item is in your facility and frequency of use, but just like your home, or you want to maintain it, you want to look after it, you want to keep it clean, you just have to go through each of those steps at various time periods in order to maintain it.
Yeah, I think keeping the schedule is the important thing, so you don't forget to get up on the roof and check it out, that kind of thing.
That's cool.
And things like that you don't have to do. Just have your landscaper jump up there and take a look for you. I mean, there's people around that can fulfill the need for you. You just have to be the one, like Melissa said, keep the schedule, organize the professionals to be there to do the work on a regular basis, and then you're keeping it maintained.
And a lot of landscapers will include things like gutter clean out in their regular maintenance, periodically throughout the year. So we've already got questions popping up in the Q&A.
I think before we leave the topic of gates, I mean, let's ask these. So Otho asks, what up, Otho? That's Knoxville. Shout out Knoxville. What style gate is the most secure? Are there security implications amongst the different types of gates that you talked about earlier, Nigel?
I don't think there's security implications. I mean, everybody, meets a relatively same standard, I would think. It's really about the functionality of the gate based on where you're putting the gate on your property. So not every gate type works in every physical, condition. So you have to be able to have the right gate in the right place. But most of the gates you see are wrought iron gates that are relatively heavy, that are working off an actuator or a gear system one way or the other. And there's a lot of really good gate manufacturers out there that build a really sturdy gate. I think you'll find that if you have a security issue, or you're worried about security, the person who's testing your security is not coming through the gate. They're looking for a soft spot elsewhere. So some of that focus is important. The gate is a deterrent. The fencing around the property or using your buildings in a fortress type style is really what deters someone coming in. So I think you probably, the gate option is 3 or 4 options based on how you need it to function. The rest of the security and the fencing is probably as important of this conversation.
Well done. Yeah, that's a great summary. So I'll follow along with that. So you mentioned like the right application, right? So Khalid asks, can you please provide a quick summary for the purpose of including a lift gate? When would a lift gate be the appropriate choice for a facility?
So if you have quite a narrow entryway or a narrow driveway, and you can't have a sliding gate or a swing gate for some reason going in one direction, a lift gate just basically works off a pivot and will stand up, let you in, then it will come back down. So if you have a very condensed area but you need that gate in that area, a lift gate works really well like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
So the last question, I'm going to go back to the to our outline, gate signage. What signs should be included on the gate, and what are best left off the gate? Let's talk about that.
These are great questions.
It really is.
My thought would be, if the gate's not working, call this number.
For emergency exit purposes. No, I think that's a good point. There needs to be signs on the inside of the gate and on the outside of the gate.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think most of the times when I pull up to a facility, you obviously have contact information about if how to rent the unit, if you're coming in, and then there's really not a whole lot on there. I think sometimes there's some sort of requirement or compliance signs about entering a facility and what you're responsible for and not responsible for, but mainly I think it's just about how to contact or how to get a unit rented is what I see a lot on gates.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen 24/7 recording is in progress at this facility, right? To kind of, Nigel, add to your point of the gate being a deterrent, right? bad actor sees it and they're like, oh, okay, there's cameras. And so they're advertising that. And then not only is that for a deterrent, the cameras is actually a nice security and like a reassurance thing for consumers too, right? There are customers who actually show up there. So I've seen that on gates when I drive up to facilities.
Mm-hmm. Sheila has added in the chat access hours, vacating notice, no smoking. Good luck with that one.
Ooh, yeah.
Speed limit, but I like also including, you know, that there is camera surveillance here and definitely the contact information for sure.
Yeah, that's all
So,
great stuff. Jackie,
yeah.
anything you'd add to that? Anything that you've seen as you drive up to a facility?
No, because some of that I think is not necessary on a gate, you know, as long as you have some kind of building to the side.
Yeah.
Basic, you know, the speed limit, I was like, oh, that's a really good one. Speed limit and, you know, what you're responsible for and whatnot on the property. Because you figure, you know, as far as renting a unit or whatnot, that should be near an office. But the rules that need to be reminded, that need to remind the customers every time they go in, these are the rules, these are responsibilities, that I think is good. That's really what everybody's going to see every time.
That's cool. Yeah, no climbing on gate. That's good.
Could be a given.
No tailgating. That's interesting. Yeah. Tom, I'm glad you're here. You sold your facility. What are you doing here? This is how this man spends his pastime. I love it.
That means Tom's had to replace a gate or two, I would say.
Yeah,
that's exactly what that means.
So
we're gonna get to that.
Well, talking about, you mentioned earlier, Nigel, the slow moving swing gates. We've actually had customers that would just kind of nudge them open with their truck because they were moving too slow, and then it snaps the arm in half.
Yeah, that's
causing
right.
thousands of dollars worth of damage, and they're like, well, that's how we do it on the farm.
Yeah.
Like, not the same thing. So yeah. Yeah. All right, Tommy.
When those cameras come in handy too.
They do, right.
Yes.
So yeah. So thank you y'all for the advice and tips on gates and walls and fencing. So let's move on to curb appeal, right? And I'm actually going to ask a question that's already in the Q&A, which it's a variation of what we had already prepared, but this is great. So Tim says, hey, what should be included in that annual facility maintenance plan? Well, let's talk about like 4 or 5 things or more, if there are more. What are the things that are these regular improvements that we should be making, and it should be on that annual facility maintenance plan? Shout out, Tim. That's a great question.
I'd say, you know, I really don't, you need to have an annual, and I think you need to have quarterly, and then I think you need a monthly, and you need to have weekly, and you need to have daily. And it seems like a little bit much, but if you have them broken down into all those different tasks, and you stick to it, like Melissa said, that's really what's key. And, you know, your dailies, your weeklies, your monthlies, those are your manager's responsibilities. Your quarterlies is sometimes, as Nigel mentioned, having service providers come in. Your annuals are getting your doors serviced, any springs fixed, having your HVAC is more like a quarterly or a biannual, getting those fixed, having your gate serviced if need be, or, you know, but like oiling your chains on your gate is really, you know, a monthly. Setting your landscape irrigation, that change happens usually twice a year, so that would be on your biannual. So I think that it kind of breaks down more into just not so much annually really as far as those different time frames.
Okay, Sheila's also noted painting curbs, parking lines, trimming bushes.
That's cool. Pulling weeds.
Yep.
That's a daily or weekly.
Daily and as needed.
And as needed.
I was gonna say, I hope you're not doing that every year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Healing kudzu. Yeah, in the South. I don't know how vast kudzu is, but in the South, kudzu is insane.
Yeah.
So yeah,
kudzu? Sorry.
Oh, yes, it is a South. Yeah, it's like a vine plant that just takes over.
It seriously grows like a foot a day. It is insane.
It's insane. We'll send you a picture. I'll put a link to a picture in the chat.
This California girl doesn't know what you're talking about.
Right? Like, yeah, it's insane. So well, let's talk about, you know, on the topic of plants and housekeeping and landscaping. So like, Sheila, trimming bushes, we talked about weeds. Are there other landscaping type activities or other cleaning type activities that we should be doing on the regular, and if so, how often?
Yeah, I think if you've got like gravel parking lots for RV parking and boat parking and stuff like that, obviously they need to be regularly maintained. It's kind of a landscaping function, but it's an all-around facility function. I think, to me, like, the homeowner or whatever, the landscaping shows pride of ownership in your facility, or in your home. So I think that, like, that is the biggest part. One of the biggest parts of curb appeal, right, is the landscape. So you roll up on somewhere and they've got a couple of old bushes and the grass is all brown or whatever, and it doesn't look that great. It doesn't give you that feeling that your gear is going to be, or your stuff is going to be taken care of as well.
Right.
So I think to me, and it might just be my weirdness, but there's a real pride of ownership in landscape. I think, because it says what you think about your own facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say stay away from grass. Grass is so maintenance heavy. You have to have someone come out and cut the grass. If you have bushes and whatnot, then you can maintain those every month or every couple of months, that they're just growing. Not your crazy southern viney bushes, but normal landscape bushes. But grass is something you have to have somebody come cut every week, and that's a commitment, and that's an extra cost. You can't let that grass grow long. Like you said, pride of ownership. You wouldn't let it go turn into weeds and be gross or dead at your own house. So you don't want that on your facility as well. So that's usually my suggestion, is if, and again, being here in California where we have no water, everybody is kind of moving towards, and actually in our state, the governor is now forcing us all with commercial buildings to put in water-wise landscaping. But they do have some nice water-wise landscaping that low water bushes that don't require a lot of water to look good and stay green. A lot of different kind of land like DG, and you can make it look very nice and presentable, but really keep that maintenance effort and cost down. And that's really like Sheila says, install rocks for water conservation and DG. And then it not only takes your water conservation down, or it saves your water usage down, your maintenance costs down, and your maintenance time down, and it just looks better all the time. So that's usually something I suggest.
Well, and keeping that in mind too with landscaping in general, if it's going to die out every season and you don't want brown, ugly shrubs either, or dead flowers that you have to replace every couple of months, like make it an evergreen kind of thing. Yeah. So.
And I always say, make sure if you've got bushes, you keep them nicely trimmed and looking good. Make sure they don't block your signage, because some people have bushes or trees even. They plant this pretty little tree and it's not very big, and then all of a sudden, 10 years later, there's a huge tree blocking their building and their sign and everything. So be kind of conscious about what you're planting, where you're planting.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. Yeah. So let me show y'all kudzu for those who are not in the South.
Oh, oh wow.
So it's this invasive vine plant that just eats. It just takes over. And so you can drive through the South and you just see big old swaths of road that has these vines everywhere. So those are not desirable. They end up covering up all the trees, and then the trees suffocate. So kudzu, don't do that. Yeah. So moving on. On the topic of cleanliness, and maybe Jack, this might be a good one for you, is like oxidation, right? And rusting and those kinds of things that happen on the doors and the walls and other parts of the facility. Like, what's the maintenance plan and how do you handle those sorts of situations?
So new doors will last 8 to 10 years before they lose that like initial luster of the shine, that brand new metal shininess, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when you want to keep your doors clean every 6 months to a year, actually cleaning your doors, because any dust that settles, depending on where you are, if you get windstorms, like sandstorms, like down in the southwest, or snow. You really, in the north, you really want to make sure you're cleaning your doors properly, because that will increase the longevity of the paint that you have. And then once that's kind of started to lose its luster, making sure you're keeping that clean. And then removing any oxidation as you see it. And if you're doing that 6 month to a year cleaning schedule, the oxidation is not going to build up. It's not going to become that really bad chalky stuff that gets all over your hands and your belongings and everything. And then when it gets to a point where your doors are really faded, you put on something like Everbright, and then you can keep them looking good forever. But getting it off, we have, or you can get it at Home Depot, they're just more expensive there. They're 000 synthetic steel wool pads. I think we might have talked about them last time. They're really great at getting off chalk and oxidation without taking the paint off of your doors, which is obviously really important. And the rust really comes from when your doors, because the paint is protecting the metal door. So when your paint is gone, whether somebody's run into it or scratched it, or if your springs are off and you're getting those scratch marks down the middle of your door, that bare metal is what's rusting. And that's where you're really going to see it. Or if you were like in Florida and you get salt corrosion, that will cause rusting or corrosion rusting. So those things are really important to protect, because once you start to rust, then you really have degradation of the door and the asset as a whole,
So unless you're,
you can do before you have to replace that.
Okay, so unless you're dealing with something like, in Florida with the salt sea spray, or like up north with the snow, outside of, those extreme kind of situations, how often should the doors be cleaned? Every 6 months should be
I'd say every 6 months or a year. I think every 6 months is a little much, maybe 9 months, maybe 9 months to a year, depending. And it really depends on how harsh your conditions are. If you guys, I think in Tennessee, your guys' conditions are really not that harsh. So you could go out on that longer end. Whereas if you're in Arizona and you're getting sandstorms and you have sand building up on those doors, you want to do it more often. So it really kind of depends on the harshness of the conditions, but I think anywhere from 6 months to a year is really good.
Okay.
And that's not just for doors. That's also for metal buildings. That's also for your gates, because all of it's going to get oxidized over time. Anything metal is going to get oxidized over time.
So what do you see as cleanliness issues that managers often miss? And this question's for both of you, either or.
I'd say picking up trash. And picking up trash and leaves. Sweeping, actually sweeping inside the units, those kinds of things. I think you see it every day, and unless you have a manager who is diligent about picking up after themselves or picking up as they go, I think it's really easy to be missed. And the more there is, the more there will be, because the more people just make it worse.
Yeah, that's right. I think certainly picking up the units and the old style buildings where they used to have bottom track and stuff like that, where all that build up happens. And then, in every building, there's nooks and crannies that people find to stuff trash into that, the management needs to know about and needs to be able to find, because people are quite inventive when they want to hide stuff in places. So, you need to be able to identify those areas as well, and I know in facilities that we walk through, like, even if someone was in there having a banana and they threw a scrap somewhere, or they put it down somewhere and put it behind something, things like that just build up over time. So being able to identify that sort of stuff is pretty important. Just on the rust thing, going back to Jackie's point, like she said, anywhere where there's a scratch or there's been degradation or a paint or a dent or anything like that, you don't have to be in a salt environment to cause rust. That oxidization will happen once the paint's removed. So if you go to your building provider and ask for some touch-up paint, or your door provider and a touch-up paint, and if you get small scratches, you can go through and touch them up and to heal up the paint so that you don't get that rusting and stuff out of those components. But yeah, the trash, I think, trash blows into corners, leaves blow into corners, and that stuff just that, never really seems to get picked up all the time, to maintain a clean facility.
Sweeping is such a simple thing, and I feel like it is the most overlooked probably. Not going to mention any kind of location, but I was in a facility recently that had a bug issue, and it was quite large roaches. They were everywhere, and I know they knew they had it because these were all dead. So they'd been doing some regulars, and after I talked to the manager a little while later, it's like, yeah, we've been spraying out there. We've had trouble in that building. Sweep them up. Sweep 2 or 3 times a day if necessary, because the last thing you want is your customer to open up the door and there's dead roaches, even dead ones. Not a good thing to see. So make sure that if you have a problem, you are staying on top of that. Even if it's dead, make sure that those hallways stay clean and all those nooks and crannies where the bugs are going to find themselves, like just sweep and sweep often. Every time you walk out your door, you should have your broom and your dustpan with you, because inevitably there's going to be cigarette butts on the ground or something, and you'll have plenty to sweep every time you walk out the door. So
I think it's a good point. You probably have a pest control company coming in, right? And so that there's a pretty high kill rate a few days after they show up and spray the facility. So you should be aware of that and be able to go sweep up whatever's fallen by the wayside over those initial few days as that stuff's doing its job. So just be mindful of what's going on in the facility and how you're maintaining it and what needs to be done after that, I think.
That's a good point. Yeah, Monica here in the comments. So not roaches, but spiders and other kinds of bugs. So dealing with that, and they had someone come out and do a power wash, and they stayed away, but they came back after a few weeks. So any advice for Monica? Monica, do you have a pest control company that spot treats from time to time? I mean, that'd be my first thought, but any other advice for Monica? I know their facility and they do maintain. They probably are one of the ones who sweep.
Yeah, Danielle just said they use gallon jugs of peppermint oil, Mighty Mint peppermint oil. She said that works really well on spiders. So maybe that's the answer right there. Try that.
And it smells good, and it's Christmas season. So Danielle,
there you go. It's the perfect time for it.
Yeah.
Two bugs with one stone.
Having a regular pest control company though that comes out that you can point out, okay, this building's having issues with spiders in this area or whatever, that's really a good way to stay ahead of it. And then constantly every single day knocking down all those webs, and it's a pain. I hate spiders too, so I feel it, Monica. That's not a good thing to have to deal with, but I would say you probably need a professional to come out so regularly.
Yeah.
And you don't know, I guess, as people are moving in, what not to keep on the bug thing, but what else you're getting in your facility in a move-in basis, I mean, stuff's everywhere and bugs and spiders are everywhere. So you're in that constant mode, I would imagine.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about presentation, cleanliness, curb appeal. Let's hammer that home, Jackie. Like, we talked about landscaping and lawn maintenance and all those things, but what's the ultimate thing when it comes to curb appeal that operators should have an eagle eye on?
Just cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness, and cleanliness is and that's all that matters. And I think going back, I was listening to our episode 1 just to make sure I didn't talk about the same thing in episode 2 as I did in 1. Just didn't want to bore the listeners. But Melissa said it, clean and bright. Your facility needs to be clean and bright, and that is what is most important, because they will not want to rent somewhere that is dirty and dark. They have to be able to see everything and feel comfortable, and they have to be able to know that their things are taken care of. And going back to what Nigel said about pride of ownership, your facility being clean shows that you have pride in what you are doing. Therefore, I trust you more to do what you are doing and to take care of my beings. When you have someone or some place that does not look up to par, makes you second guess how they're doing everything else in their business, and they could be a great business. But if there's something that makes you question their business and their methods and how they do things, that's never what you want from your customers. So the easiest thing to do, keep it clean, keep it bright.
That's cool. Clean and bright, not dirty and dark. I love that. That's killer. So let's move on to the last segment here. This one's real easy. This is more maintenance type things, right? So like we talked a lot about gates and doors and like those kinds of maintenance things, but like what breaks the most often at a storage facility? What are things that just are constantly out of order?
I would go with gates and door springs.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Back to gates.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that is getting utilized a ton, you know, it's just that's just the nature of what it is, right? It's prone to breaking or breaking down or something not working correctly. Obviously, getting people in and out of your facility is, outside of getting paid, is probably the second most important priority, right? So you want to be able to stay on that, not to keep on gates, but that really is the in and out of the business, and that's what helps. That's what controls the function of your business. So if you have a breakdown with that, and you have customers that are getting upset or they can't get into the facility for whatever reason, you know, you've got to keep on top of that. But you know, maintaining door springs, maintaining some inventory, or maintaining a you know, someone local has the knowledge base to be able to help repair door springs and doors and stuff like that is really important. People have accidents all the time back into doors, and unintentional things happen as well. So you need to be able to you know, get a replacement in and make sure that things function for your customer quick, you know, in a quick time. Most of the time, if you've got 90+% occupancy, you can't move them somewhere else while you fix what happened. So you want to be able to react quickly and know how to do that if you need to in an emergency situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's cool.
And the maintenance of those things that move, right? Because those things are the most expensive things. Like if you don't take care of it, it will break, and then you have a really expensive fix on your hand. Or with the case of door springs, if you don't take care of your door springs, then your doors actually get damaged, and it's way more of a cost than just fixing your door springs or having somebody to come out to fix them, rather than replacing a whole door, or God forbid, having somebody drop the door on themselves, and then you have a liability issue.
Right.
So it
That
really
actually,
is paid to just take care of the maintenance of it.
yeah, that actually goes into the very next question: is what are the most expensive maintenance costs that operators overlook? And I would have to say, you know, doors are right up there, because over time, even though the functionality of the door might continue to work, it's going to look bad if it's not properly maintained for a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned. But what are some of those other things that, if it's overlooked, can really start to add up on that bottom line?
Yeah, I think obviously, you know, if you have climate control facilities, air handlers is a big maintenance item that you need to take care of. You know, I'll go back to the roof. The roof is the cover on everything that you have inside your building, or your customers have inside your building. And a poorly maintained roof with water getting into facilities can create a massive insurance and liability problem for you. It is guaranteed that if water gets into a unit through a roof leak, that the person's great grandmother who came over on the Mayflower's rocking chair was in that unit. So
So true.
It's amazing what people have in their units all of a sudden when there's an issue. So, you know, being able to keep the environment out and then maintaining the environment that you're creating inside the building is really important.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Your roof. Nobody usually thinks about their roof or gets up on their roof, but that's what's going to cost you the most if it fails. So definitely, and that includes emptying out your gutters on a regular basis too, because if those back up, you're gonna have rust and corrosion and everything in your roof and in your roof line.
Yeah, and so, you know, just really quickly, the gutter system on your buildings is is to take the water to another location to dump it. The roof is to shed the water. The gutters are to carry the water to the downspouts to get it off. So if you have any buildup in any of those locations where water is coming up, water will go into your building, and it's just a nightmare for owners to have to deal with water intrusion into their building.
Is there a, like you mentioned earlier, Nigel, like, you know, your lawn care guy or whoever can, you know, be the climbing on the roof and kind of keep an eye on that. But like, is there, like, do you recommend like calling out a professional roofer once a month, or not once a month, once a year, once every couple of years? Like, is that something that you would add to the list of routine maintenance?
Yeah, I think there is maintenance. There is people who will do that type stuff. You know, you don't need a full roof inspection, but you need someone to be able to be up there to competently look for any issues that may be forming. And your roof can be functioning, but it may be forming a problem that can be also fixed at that time as well. You know, if you're a multi-facility operator, then it's a lot easier to find a local guy that you can put on a program, or will help you create a program for maintenance. So a lot of times you might have a metal roof or a standing seam roof and a flat roof or a TPO roof. So a lot of local guys will be able to take care of both of those for you. So, you know, I would call a local roofer and see if they have a maintenance program. And then you can see what that looks like cost-wise. You can see the value in it. And even if it's once a year, even if it's once every 2 years, at least you've got someone coming out to look it over. You have a check off. And then if you need to do some work, you can do some work. If you need to file insurance, you can file insurance, or whatever the case may be, and you can get some help, and you can do it. You don't need to be an expert in all of these maintenance functions. You're managing the facility, so manage the people that do the work for you. Yeah, to find the people to do the work for you. You know.
That's good advice. Yeah. So you don't have to be a roofer, a lawn care person, a bush specialist. But knowing that those things need to be done is a big part of the battle.
Yeah,
so
that's right. It's awareness of what needs to be done, and then facilitating it being done by the key personnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Jackie,
making sure you're keeping good records of what is being done when, because as Nigel had said earlier, it goes back to your warranty, your roof's warranty. You have to make sure that you're documenting all of that, especially if you're using a local person and you're not using the manufacturer to do that maintenance. You have to make sure, oh, we had the roof checked every year, and this is the thing, this is the documentation, and it looked good. And if it starts to leak, you know, 3 months after you've had it inspected and checked or fixed or whatever, you can go back to that documentation that you keep.
And that helps with liability too. Yes. If someone says, oh, you've had this roof's been leaking for the last 6 months, then you can say, no, actually we've had it inspected, and we, you know, here's our regular maintenance on it. That's a huge help for you for a lot of reasons. So yeah, definitely keep good records, document everything.
And typically those service people that you're hiring, you know, are taking that liability for you, right? When they go do the maintenance or do the inspections, there's an inbuilt liability that they're taking on when they say, yes, it's good, or no, this needs to be done. So, you know, it's part of their business model as well. So you're helping spread the risk around a little bit. But you're using a professional to help mitigate the risk that you may be exposed to.
That's cool. Yeah. Y'all, thank you. Lots of good advice here. I'll say, in case anyone's not able to see the comment section. So Danielle asked earlier, you know, what was the scrub that Jackie recommended? Jack, can you talk about the 000 synthetic? Is that just like any 000 synthetic with steel wool, or is that a specific brand? Or
it's not a specific brand. They have them at Home Depot in the painting section if you want to get them there. But you want to make sure that you're getting synthetic steel wool, because if you use real steel wool, it's metal, and it will leave shards of metal, and then will rust on your door. So it defeats the purpose. So make sure you're getting synthetic steel wool, and you make sure you're getting the 000 too, because if you get a 000, it's a lot harsher and you can take your paint off. So
there you go. 000 synthetic. Thank you, Jackie. And then in the Q&A here, Caitlin asked about, are there any tips and advice for RV storage facilities specifically? Anything that, you know, I would imagine a lot of what we talked about is applicable for RV facilities, but is there anything that RV facilities should be more mindful of than a typical storage business?
I think you have to make sure, obviously, you know, the entire driveway and everything is clear of obstructions all the time. You know, you've got big units coming in there to park up and stuff. I think probably depending on if you have hookups or not, there's some maintenance issues with having hookups inside the RV facilities. A lot of guys will provide power, you know, to RVs when they're there. If you have an open RV facility or you have a covered RV facility, obviously, you know, the maintenance of the driveways, the grading, if you have a gravel parking lot, you know, being able to maintain the roof over a covered facility. If you have a closed one, then that's just like having a climate controlled storage facility for RVs. So same sort of maintenance on that. But I would think that anytime you're storing boats and RVs and trailers and that sort of stuff, is that you know, making sure that everything's just free and clear for everyone to be able to get around without causing an issue that they could run into someone else, I guess.
Make sure your bollards are strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
There you go, Caitlin.
For those that can't drive well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa, when you were at the facilities that y'all offered RV parking services, were there anything that came up frequently as it related to the RV customers?
Yeah, so there was one facility in particular that had a problem with birds, that even when the RVs were covered, the birds would try to get into the cover and get under it, and they would try to nest. And so at one facility, we actually, have you seen the big owls that you can kind of put out on your fence lines and stuff? We had a customer bring them to us, and they're like, here, can we put these on the property? And so about once a month, this guy would come down to check on his RV, and he would take it upon himself and he would move the owls around. And we're like, okay, and I'll let him do it. It did really work.
Wow.
And yeah, so sometimes you have to be creative. Every facility kind of deals with its own unique thing. I'd never had that problem before at any other location except this one. And they just found places to nest and like to drove us crazy, but the owls worked. So
That's a fun, I mean, yeah, that's a fun tip of the day.
Yeah.
Those owl cutouts. In the
Yeah.
comment section, Tim says, hey, we remind our customers to remove all food from their RVs to avoid attracting pests. That's a great idea,
Yep.
Tim. All right, y'all. So welcome to the lightning round, the Thunderdome. So Melissa and I, we have 8 or 9 topics, and so we'll rotate. And we want y'all to give your number one recommendation as it relates to said topic. Do we understand the rules? 1.
I know it's going to be really tempting to do more.
All right, Melissa, you want to start it?
Tips for improvements or maintenance, whatever it may be about this one topic. Okay, so first up, fence and gates.
Make sure they work.
Yes, operable.
Yeah, operable. Yeah.
Operable, and then as far as fences go, actually make sure that there's no cutting, you know, holes or whatnot.
All right, we'll allow that.
Okay. Yeah,
that's great.
I like it.
Yeah.
Tim said have a good service contractor.
Shout out to Tim. You've been all over it with the advice, man. I love that. HVAC.
Changing out the filters and HVAC for maintenance, I think, would be the number one there. Yeah.
Okay.
Easy shot.
Preventative.
Yeah, I'll take that. All
right. Elevators.
State compliance.
Ooh.
What'd you say?
You have to be compliant with the state to operate the elevator. So make sure you get inspections done.
I don't own any elevators. I never think about that, but that makes sense.
That's a good point.
Get that little letter inside the elevator that says, it's been approved.
That means something.
Because that means that you're getting your inspections and that's your documentation. So yeah.
I like that. That's cool. Okay. Weeds.
Pull them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Spray Way often. All right, here's one. Chipping paint.
That's right in Jackie's wheelhouse. Come on, then.
When your paint is chipping, you have no choice but to repaint.
To repaint.
Repaint or replace.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's what
You
you
have
gotta
no
do.
choice once it's that bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
On-site accidents.
Look at your camera footage.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this comes back to security, right?
Document.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Gravel versus pavement.
Is that a question?
Which one wins in your opinion?
Pavement every time wins, but not every facility has the ability to do it. So
Yeah.
but no, again, I think it's application wise, I think RV guys and boats, will store on gravel more so than people renting units, so you do see that separation on facilities a lot.
Mhm.
But pavement every time if you can do it.
There we
And
go.
regardless, fixing any potholes and whatnot so that you don't have mud puddles and potential hazards for driving in.
Yeah.
Wise advice. And then Sheila is also a vote for pavement. Shout out Sheila. All right, last one in the lightning round here. Flooding and drainage.
Clean out your gutters. You don't have that, right?
That's true.
And I think if you have settlement ponds or you have retainage ponds, obviously you got to maintain the inflow and the outflow of the water in those type areas as well. So maintenance of that area and then making sure that there's no obstructions and that sort of stuff is important.
There we go. No lines in the gravel. Shout out Sheila. Yeah, that's all good. So thank you for understanding the assignment. So we have
Great job, guys.
really great job. Usually lightning round is not so lightning.
That's true.
But we now enter our question of the week segment. And the question is, what's the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to upgrading your facility? Biggest bang for your buck.
Jackie, I know what yours should be.
Yeah.
I know.
I was waiting for Jackie to start here.
I was gonna say, I'd say, either Everbright or paint, depending on, like you said, if you're down to chipping paint, you can't Everbright it, you have to repaint it. So so either Everbright or paint, restore or repaint.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Anything that enhances the exterior of the building is the biggest bang for the buck. So whatever that looks like and whatever the state whatever condition your facility is in, but anything to the exterior is the best place to start because it ties into the curb appeal and it ties into your rental rates and it ties into everything that you're doing in the business to try and make money. So the improvement in the exterior, specifically on the buildings, I would say would be the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And I think is really important right now because I think there's more competition out there right now.
Yeah.
The REITs are throwing in those really low prices, so you got to be able to show that you're just as clean and bright as they are.
Yeah.
The competition's high. Rates are softening a little bit. So how do you stand out from the crowd? Other than your renter is living right next door to you and that's the most convenient, but you still need to be able to sell them on the space that you're trying to provide. So, it's, CapEx expenditure is so important and, you need to constantly be pumping the money in to beat the competition because they're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's great advice. And Sheila also agrees paint. That's the thing. Melissa, would you add anything besides paint or Everbright to bang for your buck?
Well, I think just that kind of all encompassing what the customer sees. Like, it's their first impression that really matters. So you could do a lot of things behind the scenes that the customers aren't really going to notice, and that's not really changing anything. So having that thing that whether maybe it's new signage, maybe your doors are fine, but you need new signage, or maybe your lights are those awful yellow lights and you need to go LED and brighten everything up. Or maybe it's you need fresh landscaping, and like Jackie said, pull out all the things that you're having to constantly maintain and put a cool rock bed in, or that you can just spray the weeds out, that kind of thing. So but something that's going to catch the eye of the potential tenant is really what you need to be looking at right now, because that gets their attention to look at you, and then you can sell them on the rest of your property. So
and I think if you are making a change like that, promote it out there, put it on social media and tell everybody, hey, this is what we're doing and this is the change we're making. Just don't wait for someone to drive by and go, oh, well, I wonder what's changed there. Promote yourself out there and push it out there, and even if it is just a sign change, I mean, any sort of promotion is obviously great, and you can build a story around something like that, over a period of time, and it gets traction.
Before and after pictures are really impactful. That's a great thing. And like, even if it's just sealing your driveways, it seems kind of boring, and it seems like just a routine maintenance thing that you do as a property owner, but the customer might not have ever seen your property before.
No.
Right.
And for you to communicate that you care enough to even, I'm resealing the driveways, or I'm repainting the lines on the parking lot, that kind of thing, that does really speak to the tenant. But if you're not capitalizing on it and telling everybody that you're doing it, you're kind of missing out too. So.
Yeah, I think you can drill right down on that, even if it's just your quarterly maintenance, or your roofing contractor has come out to check the roof. Hey, this is what we do. This is why we're different, because we care, or whatever you want to promote. So you can, your daily, your monthly, your quarterly, yearly maintenance doesn't just have to be that mundane. You need to leverage that into promoting yourself as well.
And it's just speaking on social media, and this is kind of a little off topic, I guess, but I don't think social media needs to really be used for, hey, my 10 by 10 is, $99 this month. It can really be used in a better way to promote your facility, is to show how well you're taking care of your facility. So when you have the roofers come out, or you have the landscapers come out, ask your landscaper, hey, can I tag you on Facebook and let me take some pictures? Because they're going to say yes. They're going to say, yes, please help promote me. That's fantastic. And show your customers and your potential customer base what you're doing to maintain. Then you don't have to worry about advertising, my 10 by 10 is on sale for, $99 this month. You're showing how well you're taking care of your property. That makes me want to rent with you anyway. You didn't even have to tell me the price.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's so killer.
I always tell people, when you're doing upgrades, when you're making those curb appeal changes, take pictures. Make sure that you're keeping the same pictures on your Google profile as you do on your website, so that when somebody drives up, they can see that this is the place that they found online. They know.
Preach. Say all those words again, because
no stock photos.
I was just chatting with one of our pugs earlier today, Grant, and one of the people that he's talking to, they've got the quintessential stock photo with the blue doors, right? And the guy's facility doesn't have blue doors. And it's like, what are you telling your customers? Right? Like
told me they Photoshop their doors. They're like, no, our doors really they're not that. So I was like, I looked at your website and your doors look pretty good. I don't know that you need Everbright. And he was like, no, we Photoshopped those. I was like,
I guess Photoshop is easier than
oh my gosh. I mean, lots of things can be done with Photoshop. I mean, I sit beside the king of photoshopping every year, but the photoshopping he does to a facility is, there's, someone was on the property when I was taking a picture and their door was open. So I photoshopped it closed, or I took the people out of the Photoshop to out of the picture, so that it's an empty facility when you're taking the shot. But to Photoshop deceitfully and suddenly you have bright shiny doors, and that's not cool. That's not it's not the idea.
It'll only hurt you because now you're adding a little taste of distrust, and and sadness. But Diane said you guys could do this topic daily and still not cover everything. But y'all managed to cover a lot, and I love that you added this extra session. Hey, thank you. And honestly, thank you, our speakers, Jackie, Nigel. Thanks for volunteering your time and coming back and dropping some knowledge. I know we shared it last time, but how can the people get in touch with y'all to either learn more about Everbright, learn more about storage structures, or just learn more about maintaining and keeping up their facilities?
I'm Jackie at everbrightcoatings.com, and I'm also more than happy. I have a little schema for maintenance schedule that I give out when I do roundtables at shows, and I'm more than happy to share that with anybody who wants to email me for that. So
that's brilliant. Jackie, do you care to send that to me too? I think that's an awesome resource. Yeah, love that. And then Nigel, same question to you, sir. How do people get a hold of you?
Thank you all for being here. Nigel at Storage Structures Inc.com. I'm on LinkedIn, or you can just visit us at storagestructures.com on the web. And if you have any questions, new facilities, existing facilities, anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to chat.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Well, this episode, along with all the past episodes on storagepunk.com/resources, join us on our Facebook group and check out the Gabfocus Self-Storage podcast. Josh will get this episode uploaded in the near-ish future, and wherever you listen to your podcast, check it out. So next time you'll see Melissa and I will actually be pretty soon, in 2 weeks. We'll be back. Keeping your facility secure. So we just learned between Jackie and Nigel over 2 different episodes how to maintain and keep that facility running sharp. We're going to dive deeper into the security side. We touched on it a little bit today with the gate and some of the deterrents, but what are some things to actually keep your facility secure? We got some great speakers for that one. So we'll see y'all in 2 weeks, November 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Enjoy. Melissa, thank you.
It's been fantastic as always. So looking forward to doing this again in 2 weeks.
We'll see you soon. All right. Bye, everyone.